Afternoon everybody, it's Nick. Some interesting thoughts on the menopause that I wanted to share in the moment today actually. So just as context, I do apologise for those people who may watch my vlogs because I'll be repeating myself, so I'll try and do it really quickly. Context, I'm about year 4 into my menopause. It's been very challenging. The start of my menopause basically just sent me to bed. There was, I was no energy. I was disengaged with life. I would say, severe hormonal depression, physical aches and pains, anxiety through the roof. Just could not see how on earth I was going to put one step in front of the other, and pretty much spent as much time. My driver in life was, when can I get back to bed to sleep? So that's background. Very open-minded GP, NHS GP at the time. We exhausted all avenues of support within the NHS in terms of being able to help to diagnose and understand what was going on with my hormones. So I chose to go private. And for the last 4 years, I have been seeing a private menopause consultant. I can never say this right, endocrinologist, who are specialists in the hormone system. Now, one of the big thing they are absolutely reliant on is quite a detailed analysis of our bloods. They simply can't work without it. That tells us all kinds of things about our hormones, which actually include our thyroid, our insulin levels, our cortisol levels, as well as a number of things about our vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin B12, vitamin C, folic acid, our testosterone, and the list goes on. So I'm coming up to a 6-monthly review, and here's an interesting thing. So sorry for the complexity, but this actually reflects the reality of our health system relative to, it's not just relative to menopausal women, but that's what I'm talking about today, relative to the menopause. So I have an NHS GP who is very, very constrained in what they are and are not allowed to do in terms of what blood tests they're allowed to do and what are the triggers to enable them to do that. Secondly, because I see a private consultant, I am definitely experiencing 2 types of, whether it's unconscious or conscious, I think it's a bit of both, bias. One is that I bump very much into, well, if you're seeing a private consultant, then, if you've chosen to go private, then really, you should be doing it all privately, and that includes getting your blood tests analysed privately. And there's a big, big problem with that for me, and I'm sure for many people, because to have my periodic reviews, say 2 or 3 times a year, I pay roughly 200, say around the £200 mark. A lot of private hospitals will then charge you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds for the bloods on top of that. That's actually the really expensive thing. So being able to get them done via the NHS route is really important. And for me, if I wasn't able to do that, then actually I wouldn't be able to afford to see my private endocrinologist. I can't, because it would be thousands of pounds to do it. The other unconscious bias I'm coming across is that, well, these private consultants ask for all kinds of tests. I don't even know if they need them. And that came out of the mouth of a general practitioner this morning, to which I responded, well, the fact that they are a consultant and they are specialised in their area suggests, and I think that we have to give them the benefit of the doubt, that they do know what they're doing. But I think that bias is around the fact that they're just asking for these things for the sake of it. Now, all of this ends up in a bit of a perfect storm for women going through the menopause, because what it means is most women are getting caught up in a screwed up system, quite frankly. Because the other thing to layer another layer of complexity on this, you can see I'm a little bit wound up about this today, it's dependent on what area you're in. So I cross several counties with where I live, and I access healthcare in more than one county. And there are different rules and different approaches. So it's not consistent. So actually, if I go across the border into a different county, I can very happily walk into a hospital with my piece of paper from my consultant and my letter saying what bloods and so forth I need, and I can get them taken. Whereas if I ring my local GP, I'm basically told, no, we can't do that because it's for a private consultant, therefore you should have the bloods done privately. And it really is a muddle. So we have, and it's interesting because I did push back a bit this morning and say, well, you know, there's another perspective here, which is I'm having to pay to go private because I cannot, and this is no exaggeration, I cannot face ever going back to the first year of that menopause. I was a shell of a person. I was not living. I was simply surviving. I was not engaging. It felt like I was dead on the inside. I am not ever, ever, ever going back to feeling like that. Ever. And the NHS that I have experienced has not in any way, shape or form been able to give me the level of support and diagnosis that I have been able to access from a private consultant who has pretty much not only gotten me out of bed, but got me back to a stage where most of the time, I am completely engaged and making the very most of what life has to offer me. And when I am not, he has empowered me to understand why that is, what messages my body are trying to send me, where my levels are out of line. You know, it's educated me so much about hormonal depression, all the different signals my body's sending me, what I do and don't need. And I've somewhat lost my train of thought. But I think there's several things here, which is there's a lot of conscious and unconscious bias I have found when I go private about, well, if you can afford to go private, then you can afford to do it all. Actually, I can't. Okay. Secondly, that view that, oh, well, these private consultants are asking for all kinds of things they really needed. And then actually, you know, admitted to me by a local practitioner, and dependent on what area you're in, there are different rules on NHS guidelines as to what the GP surgeries will or won't do to you, which is why when you speak to women, you will get such a massive array of experiences that they are having. So the bottom line is it's not working. It's not working. We do not have a consistent approach at the front line. And the front line, the first place that one was going to go to is her GP. And we don't have a consistent approach of how GPs approach being able to support women who are entering this phase of life. Secondly, the support that we do have is too constrained. It's too one or two dimensional at best. It is not looking... So first step is, let's just get on top of the biological needs of women going through the menopause. So let's actually release all of these ridiculous constraints around what blood tests are and are not allowed. For women who are presenting with severe menopause symptoms, of which I was one, they absolutely should be seeing a menopause specialist, and the NHS should be ensuring that happens. How much money is wasted on women being misdiagnosed and misprescribed prescriptions and medication? And how many lives are being ruined, and actually a lot of lives being lost? The suicide rate is on the up in middle-aged women, menopausal women. So, you know, that is really not working at all. And then, so just to recap, because I think I'm losing my train of thought here, is about at the coalface, at grassroots, the GPs having more awareness and a much more open and broader approach to women presenting with menopausal symptoms, of which I think a massive first step is let's just get over this hurdle of bloods. And the next thing is actually, I think that's only one aspect of the menopause. I think the emotional and mental side is enormous, and there is nothing within the NHS to support women going through that. So, you know, most people cannot afford to be paying, you know, 60, 70, 80. I mean, you know, there were some people I reached out to for a therapy session, I mean, okay, yeah, I know they're based in London, but it's like over 200 quid for a session. I mean, if you're going once a week, how does that work? That's just not realistic. But, I've definitely found the emotional and mental support has been hugely, hugely important and an important part of my journey. And that's not even on the table yet. So I am somewhat frustrated this morning at some of the bias. And, I did push back and said, well, there is a question that says, why am I having to actually pay to go private to access the support I clearly needed at the start of my menopause? And there's no way in the world that I am going back to feeling like that. So what I have to do is I have to cross the border. To go elsewhere, to medical practices that will actually take my bloods and do the analysis of my bloods as per my consultant's requirements. I have to do that. I can't do that with my local surgery. And the other thing that comes into this is there wasn't any point having the argument because the person I'm talking to isn't empowered. They're not empowered to make those changes. They're not the people that have made the rules in the first place. They are just working within what is really quite a broken system. It is really, really quite a broken system. And they are just working within it as best as they can. So I didn't, I'm like, right, it's fine. I understand your position. I understand the rules and regulations that you're working within. That's fine. I will take the path of least resistance and I will go to other medical institutions that are working under different guidelines and actually will help me get my bloods analysed so that I can have a good session with my endocrinologist. And further to this, another example, I mean, this is, I feel really passionately about this with the menopause. So there's some really fundamental things that need to change here that go to the heart of our NHS actually. But another example on that, nearly a year ago now, I ruptured my Achilles tendon and I went to 3 different hospitals because I live in a triangle. So I went to 3 different hospitals and each time I was told something different. And the upshot was that they decided to treat my rupture in an air boot for a number of months. And I remember asking one of the consultants whether he would be scanning it, and he said, "It was such a classic injury. It's really not worth the time or the resources to do so." We roll forward a little bit, and by this point, I'm with another hospital, and I'm seeing another doctor whose view is quite different. His view is, I'm not sure it's actually healed properly. It's healed too long, which means you're out of balance and you're falling over a lot. And sorry, 1 second, my dog is just chewing a cushion, which is really a little bit naughty. So I'm just going to stop him. Martin, no, Martin. And said, it's healed too long. We're going to have to refer you to a foot and ankle specialist and probably think about surgery now. And this was about 6 months after the initial rupture. Now, I actually had, quite rightly, I think, got a little bit naffed off by this point. Three different diagnoses, 3 different approaches, resulting in something that just hadn't healed. So I decided to get a recommendation and go and see a private foot and ankle consultant who immediately saw that there was quite a significant problem with my tendon, lots of scar tissue, it healed far too long. It was a bit of a mess. It was cream crackered. Cream crackered was the medical phrase. I was actually then transferred straight to an NHS list because I was self-funding. I was treated on the NHS at another hospital, 4th hospital. Within weeks, I was treated by them. They operated. I'm now in the recovery stage. And the whole point of that is to say, how much money was wasted. I remember that first consultant right at the very start, very arrogantly saying to me, "Oh, it's not worth the time and resource of carrying out the scan. This is such a classic injury. I know exactly what to do." And I'm thinking, and roll forward all of these months, and if he'd only have scanned it at the time, you would have seen the rupture was too big to have been treated in that way. All this time later, all these hospitals, now 4th hospital, how much money has been spent on putting me back to rights, which shouldn't have been. But that is a slight aside story. I think the really big thing that does worry me, and it is, on the back of a conversation I've had with my NHS GP that basically said, well, you know, you're going private, so therefore you just need to kind of sort it all out, because our guidelines are that we, you know, we can't help out and do the bloods. But if I wasn't going private, they still wouldn't do the bloods that I needed to have done. They still wouldn't look at the stuff that I needed. They wouldn't even prescribe me testosterone. They wouldn't even be allowed to do that. So if I didn't go private, the option is I just wouldn't be able to receive the treatment I need to have in order to enable me to cope with this period of life. And that is really frustrating. And the only reason I do get it is because I am blessed enough to be able to afford to go and get the treatment I need. And that's not okay, because there's a lot of women out there who aren't. And the option of just not having the treatment. So it's not like I'm choosing between having NHS or private treatment. I'm choosing between having private treatment or no fucking treatment. That's the choice I'm making. So the point of this vlog is to shine the light on that, and that I can only hope that someone somewhere in a position who is empowered to start looking at the root causes of what fundamentally drives a lot of the issues over getting consistent and appropriate support to menopause women. I can only hope that they will hear what happens at the grassroots, and that somebody somewhere will start to join the dots and make sense of this, you know, nonsense approach that seems to be going on at the minute. So to any other women out there who are frustrated and are in that position where they don't have the choices that I have, you absolutely have my wishes and my passion and my energy to try and make things different so that women do not have to sit and suffer in silence and are given no choice and no treatment plan. Because HRT, sticking a patch on somebody, is not the treatment plan. It is part of a treatment plan. I'm going to take a deep breath and stop, because as you can see, I'm quite fired up about all of this. Oh my God, I've been speaking for so long. I'm just going to go. Okay. Lots of love, everybody. Bye.